Hello, everyone. I'm Vince Rocco in New York, so let's get right to what everyone is talking about. Today on the show, in New York City, the luxury real estate buyer has evolved into a globally minded, experience-driven individual who views property not just as a home, but as a strategic asset and lifestyle anchor. Today's high net worth buyers are often international or bi-coastal, seeking residences that offer flexibility, privacy, world-class amenities, and seamless connectivity to the global cities where they live, they work, and they play. They are drawn to turnkey homes with architectural significance, wellness-focused designs, and smart technology, often within full-service buildings that offer hotel-like services. Many are building global portfolios, with New York City remaining a cornerstone for its cultural, capital, financial significance, and prestige. These buyers are no longer driven solely by status or zip code, but by quality of life, long-term value, and the ability to live on their own terms in this new era. Luxury in New York City means access to freedom and the power to curate a life across continents without compromising on standards. And on set with me today are Leonard Steinberg from Compass, Rory Clark from Brown Harris Stevens, and Ben Willig, who is an independent real estate consultant here in New York. And they join me now to discuss. But first, let me welcome my listeners and my viewers from across the United States and all around the globe. This is Talking New York Real Estate, so let's go behind the headlines and inside real estate, the state of our industry.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you hear a lot about how crucial it is to have the right partners in this industry. At Roadway, we don't just move your clients, we give them an experience they'll love. Specialized services to our white glove treatment, it's all about making sure your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And if you're looking for a rewarding referral program, reach out to me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So today we're talking about the luxury real estate market here in New York. And in all the years that I've been in this business, the luxury market has changed like everything else does. But way back when I started, luxury was $1 million. Luxury was $2 million. And I'm sure some folk here will agree with me. Today, I don't really know what that number is, 4 million, 5 million, 10 million. It's all very expensive. But there are behaviors from luxury buyers that we're going to talk about today, break down a little bit about what these folks are looking for when they're out there shopping. As I said at the top of the show, it's sometimes now more than just an address, and it's more than just a location. It's about a whole bunch of other things we're going to get into. Welcome, gentlemen. I appreciate you being here today. Leonard, let me start with you, though. So how has the definition of luxury evolved for the high-end buyers in New York City post-pandemic and through all the years that we are in this business? What has really changed in the definition of luxury?
Well, for me, the word luxury has not changed because I've always defined luxury as the experience, not a price point. And I also think anyone who can afford to buy a home in Manhattan at any level, more than likely that purchase is a luxury to them. So while a $25 million purchase may be a luxury to that buyer, an $800,000 purchase is an enormous luxury to that person, possibly even greater so than the very high end. However, on the very high end, we are seeing what I've always termed as luxflation, where the ultra lux buyer, I would say, the $5 million plus buyer, there you have definitely seen a spiraling up of cost, especially if you want to be in one of the ultra buildings. That is a whole different stratosphere of valuation now. And many of the trends amongst those buyers have changed, and they keep evolving.
And Ben, from what you see and what you experience out there, talking to your agents, et cetera, are the luxury buyer today really focused on a primary residence, a pied-à-terre, or are they looking at, building their global portfolio, as I had mentioned at the top of the show, and why?
Well, I think the buyers at that range, and Leonard made a great point about experience. The folks that I know and I'm in touch with, they spend a month here, they spend a month in France, they spend a month at another, house of theirs. So it's really a primary a terre, right? There's no such thing as a primary or a pied a terre. They're really in multiple, I think, locations. And so it's all about that experience. And even at those levels, I think at every level, whether you're an $800,000 buyer or us sitting at the table, you're looking for that community. And what are some of those shared experiences in community? And a lot of them have deep networks in New York City, which is what makes this city so great. And when you have those things that are going on, they really value, I think, having that space, having those experiences here, and what is going to be that thing within their community that's going to really resonate with them.
Rory, when you get a new buyer, a luxury buyer, as we define luxury, what are their expectations coming to the table as you're trying to set the stage, you're trying to get prepared as to where do you want to be, how many rooms you want, and blah, blah, whatever. What are their expectations, especially if they're not New Yorkers and they're coming from other lands or other countries, whatever?
Yeah, no, that's a good clarification on the end of that question. So it depends on the buyer and whether they're going to look to you and say, well, you're the luxury specialist, so this is what I'm looking for, and you're going to guide me on where I want to be. And then you have other buyers that really have that in mind as far as what they're looking for in that luxury experience, whether it's they want to be downtown more, which is the ongoing trend that we're continuing to see, not necessarily at the expense of all midtown and uptown properties around the park, but we're seeing that downtown buyer. So it's catering to that buyer and what they're asking for, and understanding the give and take of you taking the lead and finding what you think they're going to resonate with versus when they're going to take the lead and lead their search.
You're leading into my next question, and that was going to be what neighborhoods are they looking at? We've got many boroughs here, 5 boroughs of New York City. They're looking at Manhattan primarily. They're looking at Brooklyn. Is it downtown as you reference? Is it uptown? That also has changed, in all the years that I'm following and paying attention, not only just for luxury, but for any buyer. What would you say is the hottest neighborhood they are looking for at a higher end?
The higher end, I think you have the West Village and the west side of the West Village. Tribeca and Soho obviously always maintain sort of their integrity evaluations. And then around the park as well, you're still seeing like the 200 Amsterdams that are still experiencing sort of a burgeoning experience. And then at the expense of some of the sort of, Upper East Side corridor, it still has its value, of course, but you've seen buyers it's also the product, right? A lot of them are maybe trending a little bit more towards the condo versus co-op. And so you're going to find that probably a little bit farther from the park on the east and west side.
Leonard, how stuck do luxury buyers get when we are suffering here in New York City from a housing shortage or a supply that's not growing, it's dwindling? How do we handle that? How do we, place people where they want to be when there's really not a lot to show and not a lot available?
It's a real problem. I think the volume of what people perceive as luxury, and remember, luxury is different to different consumers. For everyone, it's very, very, very different, location-wise, product-wise as well. And whereas there are these huge variances in how people perceive luxury, there is only one luxury that truly matters to everyone, and that's time. Time is the last luxury. And I think that is being translated very much into the type of real estate that seems to be most attractive to this wealthier audience, which is move-in ready properties that do not require 1, 2, 3 years worth of renovation or rebuilding. That seems to be a common theme I see everywhere, and wherever that might be, because this luxury buyer is becoming very neighborhood agnostic. I think if you were to look for the one area that has the highest concentration of enormously expensive apartments trading right now, it happens to be on the West Side Highway in Hudson Square at Houston and the West Side Highway, where you have a building that has a $2 billion sellout, where $1 billion worth of sales have happened that have not been recorded anywhere, that no one really knows about, that sends a very different narrative about the health and status of the luxury markets in Manhattan right now. If those numbers were installed into all the figures and reports you see on a weekly basis, people would be jumping up and down, and that's coming the way 220 Central Park South delayed all their data until the very end, and then everyone said, Manhattan luxury real estate is booming. Well, what was closed happened 2 years after the market in which it happened, so the data that came out was actually grossly inaccurate and did not reflect the market in which those transactions took place.
So well said. Ben, so based on Leonard referencing new developments, in the overall scheme of things, as you look at our New York City marketplace, most of the new development stuff would be considered luxury. They're very high priced. How is that doing today? As I said before, inventory not being so robust. We're kind of searching sometimes to find places to bring our buyers. How's new development in general doing?
Well, in some ways, the inventory is not as robust for what certain, I think, luxury consumers are looking for. And in some ways, it's way more robust than, years ago when we started in the business because of all the development that's come over the last 10, 15, years or so. There's many more options in that $4 or $5 million plus range in general. What's selling right now are things that, to Leonard's point, are in a great location and have that great quality. So the consumers are very, very astute because they want that, move-in ready. They know some of the details. As an agent, you have to be very knowledgeable about all the quality aspects that go into construction. So it's really a combination of the two, location, plus quality, quality, quality. And sometimes, there's developers who try and, because it's expensive to do that. And if you miss the mark from the developer side of things with some of the ones we work with, you're not getting those record-breaking price per square foot. So you really can't cheap out too much on what you're building and putting in there. And from the supply perspective, if you look at this type of buyer, what they're really looking for and what's setting these prices is really that what I would call collectible value, right? These are people who collect art, collect watches, a lot of the finer things. So any run-of-the-mill general property, might have certain valuations, but what's the difference? What's the unique factor, that collectible value that someone's going to want to pay that much more for? And getting that right is tricky, and that's not in as high a supply.
It is very tricky. Leonard, let's talk about, the global competition, okay, for New York, Dubai, London, Singapore, for example. How do we stack up luxury buying-wise to those locations? Ultra wealthy buyers, how do they choose where they want to invest? As all of you said before, people like to buy in different areas, have many homes, for example. But, how do we stack up against just those three? London, Singapore, Dubai.
Well, I think, again,
because Dubai, in my opinion, way back when started that whole luxury trend of, oh my God, everything is zillions of dollars in Dubai, so let's kind of, carbon copy that here in New York.
Well,
Right.
I think the Dubaification of luxury has happened globally.
Dubaification.
And I do think...
That's a Leonard word.
You heard it here first.
That's a new word. Webster, where are you?
There is a Dubaification. You see it in New York, you see it in Miami, you see it around the globe. And I think there are different kind of clients who like a uniformity in their homes wherever they may be. So whether they're in Hong Kong or whether they're in Monaco or whether they're in Sao Paulo, there's something that feels very familiar to them because a lot of it looks very much alike. I do, though, think you bring up a very important point in that if you are looking for collector quality aspects to real estate, it might be wiser to look for that authentic experience that truly translates to the environment that you're in. What is an authentic New York experience? What is an authentic London experience? What is an authentic Hong Kong experience? And then what is an authentic Dubai experience? And then really tap into that fully, always with a focus on quality, because quality sustains trends, times, and trauma. We've seen a lot of poor quality deliver tremendous trauma over time. And then it's up to the individual. I think at one point, when you've achieved a certain level of wealth, you should be allowed the freedom to pick and choose what you like. But that's, I think, where professional real estate agents step in and say, please consider the following, because in the event you ever decide to sell, you need to consider the following aspects.
Well, very true. Buyers have to look at value today and value someday down the road when they have to sell. You wanted to say something?
Well, I kind of have a question for these guys, because the folks that I've talked to, when they go to Dubai and Singapore particularly, maybe less so London, their social experiences are just a lot less and not what they have in New York.
Who cares? They have an iPhone. They don't need people.
But is that what you guys see too from those clients who have that type of thing?
I have a friend of mine, a lady, and she actually fell in love with someone online to discover that it was not a real person.
A dating app?
It was a fake, AI-generated that's where we've come to. So I think when people say, for some people that is very important, and for others, their eyes are glued to a screen, either making money or watching the latest like trash trauma, scandal for profit post that gets engagement and makes someone rich in a basement.
Maybe Bravo TV in there.
Exactly.
Leonard, you never disappoint. Sorry, let me ask you a hypothetical.
I love holding back, by the way.
No, I know that. Asking you a hypothetical question. So, if you talking about all these global luxury locations, if you had $100 million to spend, $100 million, and you wanted to spend some of it in a luxury location outside of New York City, where would it be for you?
London. I think London is grotesquely undervalued right now. I think it's going through a traumatic economic rearrangement. I think the tax structure for foreigners to buy is kind of crazy. That has to correct at some point. Right now, I think it's 17 or 18% closing costs in London. That's very, very high. But the volume of inventory on the high end especially makes the pricing very attractive because of the quality that it delivers.
Rory, to what extent are New York luxury buyers influenced by these global trends? I mean, there are trends all over. There are trends here in New York. There are trends in all these cities we talked about. For example, different lifestyles, wellness, designed homes. What trends are trending more than not these days? Well, I think for this particular buyer.
Kind of to Leonard's point, I mean, everything is on our phones, right? So whether it's happening globally or it's happening on your phone, I do think there's an extent of the on-demand technology in the wellness field where, you've heard about the IV treatments and all these high-end, I mean, a gym and a spa is not nearly enough. So I think it's the on-demand aspect of some of these things on a different level that people are expecting that they can get anywhere. So I don't know if there's one area that's driving that trend because we're all on our phones and now you have services catering to these people that have these one demand. I can have a doctor over in 24 hours if you need a doctor. I'm having an IV drip party because we want to feel better about ourselves. So I don't know if that's globally driven or just by our phones and the technology that's driving the wellness trends.
I mean, no matter what it is, real estate or not, you don't ever have to leave your house.
Well, I think the number one trend, there's one amenity that I think is the most desired amongst the wealthy globally. It's the one amenity that I hear repeatedly, taxation. It's not a climbing wall. It's not a swimming pool. It's not a doorman. It's not a gym.
It's a fact of life.
It's taxation. I hear it again and again and again and again. And the reason why London has so much inventory now on the high end is because of the shifts of the non-dom tax status, where those who are in London now have had a whole wave of tax benefits removed, and it immediately translates to people moving out because the wealthy are an extremely mobile group of people. A lot of them have a private jet. I'm sure you saw Paris Hilton's new jet. It's all pink, as it should be, and it is
We're on kid shows.
I spoke to a client the other day. I asked a client the other day, "Where do you live? Where would you say is where you live?" And she said, "In the air."
Really?
That's where she lives, in the air, because they travel so much between city to city to city.
Well, if you follow social media a lot, that's a very valid point, because I say the same thing sometimes. Do you ever get out of the air? They're traveling all over the place. I don't know where they're going, what they're doing, how they're earning money, but they're always up in the air going somewhere. I'm like, okay.
And the compass is pointed in the opposite direction of the tax collector.
Well, there you go. All right, we got to take a short, Leonard, we've got to take a short break. We're coming right back as Talking New York Real Estate is just getting underway on this very hot and humid Tuesday morning here in New York. Don't go anywhere.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
We are back. All right. Buyers in this segment are prioritizing global connectivity, okay? We talk about iPhones. We talk about, can't go anywhere without our phones. Do they need to have proximity to airports, international schools, embassies when they're looking at New York City property, or does none of that really matter? As I think Leonard said before, whatever makes sense at whatever price point and you feel good about it, you're going to do. But when you're talking about the higher end, do you need to be next to a school? Do you need to be next to, an embassy? Where do you want to be?
Most of these high net worth individuals have their own jets. They're going to go their own places. They have the means to really do anything. And if you look at what's actually selling, it's all in those high demand locations, like Rory said, in the West Village, or you have, the Henry, for example, on the Upper West Side that's doing much better than some of the other projects that are more on the outskirts. So clearly people still value that location and they have the means. When they're here, they want the New York City experience, I believe, still. Part of that is also driven by supply and demand. Part of it's also going to depend on who you ask and which agent, because I work with a lot of different agents, and the ones who, in Hudson Yards, for example, where a lot of them are trading, it's a lot of my Asian, clients and people who are buying from over there will buy in that area. People who are more New Yorkers, maybe the West Village. So it really depends, clientele to clientele, I think, what people prefer. But in general, still those locations are really, really key.
Leonard, how are the high net worth individuals viewing New York City real estate? I mean, we've had a slowdown, because of interest rates on the non-luxury buyer who are not, paying cash. Are they looking at lifestyle purchases, safe haven, when they're looking and when they're buying, or both, a combination of both?
Well, I think number one is to enjoy life, but then the golden rule of most wealthy is thou shalt not lose money ever. So buying real estate that sustains time is very important to them. I think, though, that we have to understand that the understanding of the wealth is very, very much skewed by Instagram influencers who think that everyone is in a gold-plated Bentley with a private jet and, their little dog running behind them with 6 servants. That's really a sliver of the very wealthy. I find some of my wealthiest clients are people you wouldn't instantly recognize as wealthy at all. And a lot of great wealth is pretty boring, and a lot of great wealth is very hidden, especially now when you see this $120 trillion plus worth of generational wealth transfer happening, where, for instance, the Hermes family, everyone goes like the Hermes family, it's a few of the patriarchs. But in reality, the Hermes Trust is 100 people, each of whom earned $20 million plus last year. That's a lot of really rich people coming from one entity. And I think that is the future of luxury. So I think we should be bracing ourselves for extreme luxflation down the road if what is happening continues. Because remember what happened with Marie Antoinette. It wasn't pretty. Yeah. Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake. These days they're saying, let them eat limestone. Not good. Yeah. You got to be careful. You definitely do see a brewing of anger and resentment because of this 24/7 broadcasting of this extreme wealth. You get $30 billion bonuses for unprofitable companies. That fuels anger and resentment, and the majority of people are not earning that. And there's a numbers game at play here. So I get a bit nervous about this extreme wealth display. It's concerning.
You bring up a good point, and I've recognized the same thing through the years, being on social media. The hype with some of these younger, more flashier influencers and running around in planes, in fancy cars, with their little dogs following them behind.
Rented.
Correct. But the impression is that these people are very, very wealthy, very rich. As I said earlier, do they ever work? Compared to the very wealthy people that we all know in this town for many, many years who are quiet, under the radar, very wealthy families, spend whatever they want to spend for real estate. How does one, looking at all this, decide, because I'm not convinced that everybody is super smart, how do they decide who's real and who's not in the whole presentation of wealth on social media? And even, does it matter?
How do you know what's real today anywhere?
I don't know.
It's a real problem.
It's a problem.
One thing is,
when you're talking wealthy, right?
I think the real question is, when you meet someone, do they know if they have enough, right? Because no matter what price point you have, no matter where you are on the spectrum, does that person really know that, like, hey, I have, enough? I think someone early in my career told me, look, there's the people who want to be on the Forbes, billionaire list, and then there's an equal number that don't want to be on that list. I'd say today there's probably 2 or 3 who don't want to be on the list for that. So, to me, money's always been a magnifier. You know, if you're a nice person with a little bit of money, then you can do even greater things with a whole lot of money. And if you're a jerk or you want to show off and things like that, and you have a little bit of money, then you do a whole lot more of that if you come into more. So to me, it's just really a magnifier of the personality you come in touch with.
I think understated wealth makes a little more sense to me, at least in my world. It's all this flashiness sometimes I look at and think, well, okay, whatever. Rory, so in some of these newer buildings in the higher end luxury buyer, they're looking at these branded residences, concierge services, private clubs, amenities, blah, blah, blah. Is this what is really attracting the higher end wealthy buyer because it's convenient, it's very hotel-like living? Or is it just something that, well, why not? I think Leonard said before, when you buy something, you have to be concerned about selling it too someday. And I know from being a new development sales rep for years that a lot of people don't use the amenities, but they buy into it because when they sell, it's something they can offer in a resale, and it works.
Well, the best part about showing those amenities is they're always empty, right?
Well, they're always empty.
It's so easy to get in, and you don't have to worry about getting in there. And when
Here's
you're taking photos,
no
you don't
one
have to
uses it.
Exactly. We can get professional photos because no one's on the treadmills.
Correct.
So we can move the gym equipment
I did that
around.
yesterday.
So it's great. Well, I think that goes to the status that you mentioned earlier. You know, people are looking for the status, and maybe some of that is, hey, I want the resale value of it. But for years, I've always looked at a lot of boutique buildings that have a ton of amenities and the doorman, and then the developer puts out a proposed budget, and it looks somewhat reasonable, and down the line, those common costs just go up and up and up, and usually the budgets are as tight as they can be, right? And the building starts to live and breathe with the owners running it, and they realize, wow, the budget's got to double now, and now how resellable is that when the new stuff is still much lower? So I do think it attracts certain clients, and the conversation we're having in general about the wealth status, I think your vibe attracts your tribe, right? And I do think a lot of agents that want to attract that type of client that Leonard, you said, who's renting things to look fancy on social media, and everyone, they need an agent too. Everyone has their own people. So, and maybe there's some agents out there that cater towards more people that, are the understated wealth that don't want to be on those lists and things like that. So
look, not all rich are created equal. They're very, very different, because someone who makes boring roof tiles in Kansas might be a lot wealthier than your hotshot Wall Streeter.
Oh, yeah.
So don't underestimate the source of wealth, and don't underestimate the source of conservative budgeting. There are people who reach the age of 60, 65 and sell their small plumbing business that are worth $50, $60 million. Wealth is created in multiple areas, and these days there's so many unknown areas. I mean, I make fun of influencers, but how much money do some of these people make? You look at crypto and people go like, crypto, and all of a sudden they're crypto billionaires. So there are multiple sources of wealth, multiple sources of luxury consumers, and they all have very, very different tastes. So I think you cannot lump them all under one umbrella.
Well, again, leading into the next question, I was going to ask you, we've all sold to very wealthy people pre-war apartments, Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue. That's not brand new. That's not luxury. That's not amenity driven. But to your point, everybody has different tastes. I live in a pre-war. I'm not wealthy, but I live in a pre-war building, and I love it. And I would only live in a pre-war building. So everybody has different taste. So to your point, what is it about that pre-war? Is it because they live an understated kind of life and they don't really want to be out there and flashy and glamorous and show everybody that they're wealthy? They may have 14 rooms, but nobody knows it from the outside.
Exactly. I think it, again, varies, but you should also not underestimate the power of old that's revitalized.
Correct. Well,
if you
that's
look
true.
at people who own a 1950s Bronco, but it has a GPS in the glove compartment, there are multiple ways now, especially of looking towards older product as collector items, because they're impossible to replicate. As much as people want to believe that a 80-story Robert A.M. Stern limestone building is a Park Avenue building, it's not. There are only certain kind of buildings that cannot be replicated however hard you try, and just because it has a limestone facade doesn't make it a 740 Park Avenue. So those buildings will always have a collector grade quality about them that will be appealing to a certain audience. But if you go into the majority of those apartments, they've been gut renovated with everything and anything you could imagine might be in the brand newest building. Maybe not as many amenities, but when people say like, I have a beautiful pool in my... It's like, I have 4 pools at my weekend home. So it's different for different people.
Must have a through the wall AC though.
Well, that is a big concern.
They
The
still have it through
mechanicals.
the wall. Well, that's very
The
true.
mechanicals are a big deal. I would say that any pre-war building,
Or in the window. I still have
Right,
it in the window. I see it.
but any pre-war building that wishes to cater to the next audience, as opposed to saying like, well, I'm happy here. Whenever a seller says to me, well, I'm happy here, I don't care about the window unit, go like, oh, will you be buying your own apartment from you? No, you're selling to the next audience. And if your building or your unit does not cater to the next audience, you have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's where pre-war buildings have an enormous opportunity to retrofit, just the way they're doing with, gas-guzzling 50s collector cars are now being outfitted with electrical drivetrains. You adapt.
You adapt. And when we talk about buyers trying to identify with different styles of homes, aligning with certain images, lifestyle, social value, how do they decide? And really, what becomes, the most important out of all these things?
Well, everyone's different, right?
Well, everyone is different, I know, but I still struggle sometimes because we all know that buyers don't always know what they want, okay? And we have to drive them to where they need to go. And then they say, oh, how did you know that?
Well, like,
Right.
Rory, you said people will lean on you as the expert. Like, do they listen to you at the end of the day and take you that final advice, or what is it for?
I think it's a mix, and I think those are sometimes for us agents the best clients that understand your value and will lean on you to the extent they want your value and input on things that are not right or wrong. Like, where do I want to live? What type of building do I want to be in? There's no right or wrong answer to that.
No.
But maybe they don't realize, but you start to show them things, and if they keep saying, "Hey, like I really want the amenities," but then they hate every big shiny building. It's like, well, maybe we need to turn to something different. And so I think those are the best type of clients. And the other clients that drive their search, sometimes they're great and they really know what they want and they get to it. And sometimes you can just kick and kick and kick and kick until you have to really be a little more aggressive and say, look, this is what you've said, but this is not what you're seeming to trend towards.
It also is driven by interests. So, for instance, if you have an art collector who collects, old masters, they don't need 12-foot ceilings and massive wall space. If you have a collector of photography, they may not want a bright apartment. They actually may want a dark apartment with no light. So it varies considerably from person to person. There may be someone who doesn't care about a gym. I have a client right now. She doesn't care about a gym at all.
Right.
She says, I work out. What is that? Her husband, though, works out an hour and a half every day. So for some people, certain things are important, and for others, they aren't. And I think at the end of the day, real estate is very much like matchmaking. You could introduce someone to the most beautiful blonde in the world because they only want to date blondes. They marry a brunette. So you just never know. But our role, I think, is as matchmakers, we try and connect people, and then we identify the pros and the cons, and then leave it up to them actually to decide. Sometimes people need a nudge. It's the same way some people have difficulty committing to marriage.
Sales
You're
is not
absolutely
sales.
correct. Sales is not
Sales is not sales. Sales is education.
Sales is a lot of education and a lot of grooming
Therapy.
and coaching and
Yeah.
therapy that comes along with it.
I'm actually quite spectacular with a taser. You should see my skills with a taser.
I'm not even going to go there.
Do you have one on you?
Always.
Your hair wasn't great before real estate.
No, I'm 30.
Tell us a little about the taser. I mean,
No, sometimes people need a
know.
taser to get back into the real world. And a big city like New York or London or Beijing is the ultimate equalizer to show anyone who thinks
Yeah.
they're rich that they're not that rich.
well,
It's disturbing.
very disturbing. Ben, how is luxury these days in Brooklyn and say in Queens, in two of our boroughs outside? Everybody thinks Manhattan is the be-all, end-all. Manhattan is the cream of the crop for luxury.
No way.
How are we doing
No
in Brooklyn
way.
and
I
Queens?
remember when I first came into the city and the first property I was buying, everybody was talking about, Williamsburg, it's up and coming. It might as well be as expensive as the West Village these days, or as
Kevin
trendy
Hermes.
as... Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean... now people are coming to me like, Williamsburg is way overdone and it's too, high end. It's not, it doesn't lost its cool, factor because it's been, so much overdone. So some of these areas in Brooklyn like that are tremendously popular. And I would look out for Queens in the future because I think that's, probably the Brooklyn of, 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm a big Queens fan. My first purchase was in Queens, and you've just seen a ton of development. Long Island City looks completely different than it did, many years ago.
And all the new builds in both Brooklyn and Queens are amazing.
Yeah, and people shift because as soon as something gets overdone, well, the neighborhoods that are kind of on the outskirts of that then become cooler, and that attracts, certain things. And, that's where you really see the rise in some of those areas. Greenpoint has definitely been that over the last few years with some great developments, through there. So those neighborhoods, I mean, yes, the prime Manhattan neighborhoods will always be that because you always have the Park and low supply in the West Village. But some of these other neighborhoods are very, very popular.
They're very popular.
And less transient in a sense, right? I mean, Manhattan almost has a bit more of a transient nature than Brooklyn and Queens in some cases, where you have people that view that young families growing with kids and they want that half step, right? That they want the urban experience, but they don't want to be in Manhattan next to their office because they don't need to be anymore. So, and you're seeing people staying in those apartments, I think, a little bit longer. They're not going to the suburbs. Their suburb is Brooklyn and Queens. And they're in the office, sometimes more these days, up to 4 days a week, but they can do that.
Yeah.
As Ben said before, sales in our industry and a lot of industries is really about education and coaching and whatever. When a luxury buyer comes to you, and says, I could really live anywhere. I could live in Brooklyn. I could live in Queens. I could live in Manhattan. As long as it, as Leonard said, fits what I'm looking for, fits my lifestyle, whatever. Where do you start?
Send them to someone else? No.
Because, New York real estate is that big.
For sure. Yeah,
so where do you start?
Those are intimidating
Especially
clients.
if you don't know those clients very well.
Well, first, you're going through what I call the education phase, which every client has that. Sometimes it's the first day out is the education
and the prep stage. If you don't do that properly, you're going to be in trouble anyway.
Absolutely. You got to prep them on the phone and get them ready, of course. I always say you want to go from A to Z. You don't want to see something on Sunday, then go get your cash account on Monday, and now we've lost the apartment. So I think that varies, yeah.
I think, I was, too dumb to know otherwise when I started in this business than to keep things really simple. And I think a lot of agents miss just the most important question when they start talking to someone. They start asking about the apartment or this or that. I would just turn that around and say, well, what's important to you? Right? What's the most important thing to you about this? And that is way more open-ended. At dinner every night, I force my kids to ask an open-ended question. So, it's the quality of your life is the quality of your questions.
Good for you.
And that you'll get, maybe
Anything.
It's their friends. Maybe it could be something completely unrelated about the apartment, and then all of a sudden that narrows it down and gives you a lot more to work with. So if you're just an order taker, you can't be an order taker in this business. No. You have to really get to know the people and what's important to them, and that could be a lot of things.
Again, to all of your point, when I'm teaching, and I tell the same thing to the real estate students, it's like you have to sit them down, educate them, kind of coach them, and asking them, what is it that you want? What is the lifestyle that you're looking to achieve? Where do you want to do that, whatever? And then with our expertise, we can come back and say, okay, here's what I think, and maybe this maps to what you're looking for. Let's have a conversation. But how many agents just run out the door? I got a buyer, I got a buyer, I got a buyer, and I got to show 10 apartments this week.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the greatest opportunity for great professional agents in a world where AI is already taking away a lot of jobs. I just read today about a company where they're going to reduce their staff by 12% over the next year and increase their revenue by over 30% due to AI. And in the real estate sphere, especially amongst agents, there's this enormous opportunity in that a lot of what we do could be replaced by AI. But AI is probably a greater threat to those with high IQ than it is to those with high EQ.
Correct.
And I think real estate agents specialize in EQ. And if you can really tap into the EQ potential of the advisory role you play as an advisor, not just to facilitate a transaction, but to actually guide people well before a transaction, all the way through the transaction, and then forever afterwards. At that point, you've established real value that people are willing to pay for.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't know how to articulate what they actually want. So
most of the time they don't.
So to what Ben was saying earlier, like maybe it's the questions we ask. Well, what's your lifestyle like? Where do you go every day? Do you leave your apartment?
Yeah,
and if you do, where are you going?
Right.
And it's another thing when they talk about, I want a huge primary bedroom or I want a huge outdoor space. It's like, how do you spend your time in your current apartment right now, your current home? Like, you realize, I actually don't really like to sit outside. It's kind of loud over 2nd Avenue, but I thought I want an outdoor space. So I think it's understanding that question to poke, well, what is your actual lifestyle? Because then I can translate that into what I think you really actually want.
Yeah.
The question that you ask, how do you live in your current space, is the best question. Because maybe that requires bigger space, smaller space, whatever.
Yeah.
Or like space.
And they have the epiphany when you ask that. They're like, oh, you're right. I'm never in the kitchen. I don't even know where the pots are.
They definitely do. And that's why that question is I think the leading question. You're looking for something new. Great. How do you currently live in your current space. I mean, amazing. All right, we got to take another break. We're coming right back. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
When we first started Excel Real Property Management 11 years ago, we did so with the intention of protecting the investment community. Here at Excel Real Property Management, we focus specifically on serving the needs of individual apartments, townhouse, and small multifamily building owners both in Manhattan and select neighborhoods of Brooklyn. Our services encompass everything: rent collection, expense payment, handling maintenance and repair, turnover between tenants, insurance needs. Literally anything that an investor would typically handle him or herself, we take care of for them. Whether you hold one individual apartment or a rental building that houses 20 units, Excel is here to help with all of your specific needs.
Okay, we are back. Let's talk about a couple of practical realities, okay? So how are factors like taxes, regulation, and cost of ownership affecting the way luxury buyers today are approaching New York City compared to any other international cities? Does it have any sway in their decision-making at all or not?
100% yes. I think that taxes have become a big focus. I also believe, though, that upon more careful analysis, when you look at so-called tax-free environments, there really is no such thing as a free lunch anywhere. So when you go into a tax-free city or state and you really look at the numbers a lot closer, the differential is not as large as it might appear at first glance. And I think that is becoming an important role of agents with good advisors who are financial advisors, because real estate agents aren't, but to understand those differences before you make big changes in your life, because yeah, you may save 8 or 10% in taxes moving from one city to another, but then if by being in that city you have to spend X thousands more dollars a month to do the things you do in the other city that kind of you don't have to pay for, that starts to add up. So I've always said without accurate, complete inventory, there can be no real solutions. So I think that is an important ingredient now, and taxation, very important, I think, as far as addressing the housing affordability issue here and everywhere. Every area has to become more realistic because regulation is too complex, cumbersome, complicated, slow. Those things are all resolvable, and they're quite easily resolvable, and at the same time, they can happen while building beautiful cities and towns. I've seen a lot of very complex, slow regulation deliver really hideously ugly buildings that have done nothing for the city or town they're in. So it has really very little to do with just one or the other. I think when those seeking a quality of life and those seeking a speeding up and simplification of regulation that brings down cost, when those two forces come together, as they have in other parts of the country and the world, you resolve the issues that are cause for great strife. And right now we are seeing affordability being the number one issue everywhere. Everywhere in big cities, affordability is a big issue, not just in New York City, but in many other cities that were in the past considered very affordable.
I mean, I just looked at my Con Ed bill before we came on the air here, and my bill from July to August doubled. And I'm like, what? I don't spend any more or less time in July than I do in June or whatever. How did it just
pumping that AC,
double?
aren't you?
Apparently,
Through the window. It's a pre-war building.
With a window air conditioner. I mean, it just doubled month to month. And it's like, okay, fine, but why?
So do a 4,000 square foot home in a tax-free state and see what that bill is.
I mean,
I'm talking about 900 square feet, okay? It's bigger and smaller, whatever it is. Really?
When you look at the macro numbers, every time there's been some type of massive regulation or increase in taxes, New York, you see it in our macro numbers, it takes a hit. A lot of times there's a pull forward where before it goes into place, you actually see a spike and and then a hit, and you have over the years. The fact that our luxury market and just our market in general is doing what it's doing, consistent to maybe slightly up in some places, hot in others, is a enormous testament to New York City, the organic nature of what we have in New York, because we've done everything wrong, from taxation and running the buildings and all these different things over the last few years, and still we have these incredible, sales numbers and things like that. So if we just get a little bit of relief and some intelligence on policies and taxes, we let the most successful tax abatements in construction, lapse without really replacing it in a great way. There's so much that could be done if everybody comes together and talks about it. And our numbers are really good in spite of that, not because of that. Right. And that's really impressive. So it would be really nice to see us go in a different direction with that.
And those, by the way, who argue that housing affordability is not our problem, it will be your problem sooner or later. In fact, it's already your problem.
Indeed.
Maybe if you don't see it or acknowledge it, it's because you're putting on blinders. It's a problem for everyone. And
it's
if there was a
problem.
There's a perfect example of how affordability is resolved. If the bastion of capitalism, Monaco, can put affordable housing in the most expensive building, Tour Odeon, on the lower floors with a separate entrance
there you go.
For teachers and firefighters and policemen so they don't have to travel 3 hours each way to get to work, that is good for you when you have a fire in the penthouse. They're close. They're there, and you don't have to worry about finding the personnel who do the kind of jobs that are essential for operating a city.
Yep.
Very true. Rory, what are the biggest deal breakers or non-negotiable things, for this new wave of, buyers here in New York City? Is there anything that is considered a deal breaker or something that's, just not negotiable? I don't want to deal with that. I want what I want. It is what it is. Anything in particular, or everything?
Again, it's just everything, it's everything across the board, depending on the buyer. But I mean, earlier you were asking about location and where clients are trending to. When you're talking about families, yes, I think there's some families that will live anywhere because they have the drivers and things like that, and they're willing for the children to drive 30, 40, 50 minutes, sometimes in many cases uptown to go to a great school. But I always
with
joke,
Uber and Lyft these days, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, I actually think a lot of them have services specifically for this, which is brilliant,
right.
And people need that service. But I do joke that sometimes you see the migration where a lot of families do get tired of that, and they're sick of sending their kids in 40, 50-minute rides, and so you have the downtown to uptown migration. I also have clients doing the east to west side migration or vice versa, because they realize that their lifestyle and their community is where their kids are, and that's usually closer to where the schools are. So I have clients right now that have been looking to move from the east side to the west side, and they're moving around a lot of chess pieces just to be closer to their friends and family. Not family, but friends, where their children spend time.
And older parents moving to Brooklyn to be closer to where their kids are living.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting trends, but I think
point.
the word close is the common denominator. A lot of people want to be close to where they work to save on commute times, because commuting is just a big waste of time often. And being close to conveniences, amenities, schools, family, friends, maybe the things that excite them, like whether it's an opera or theater or who knows what. But there's so many attributes to each different city that appeals to a different audience. And being close is invaluable, because the last thing people want to do is sit in traffic. Yes, they can, and yes, they can look at their phone, but it's still traffic. It kind of stinks. I moved specifically to be more walkable.
As I think a lot of people wish to do, right? I mean, I would prefer to walk everywhere than jump in a car, and especially at today's prices. Ben, so cash is king. It's been our expression in this real estate business all the years that I'm selling real estate here in New York City. Are the luxury buyers more apt to pay cash for their apartments these days here in New York City, or are they looking to finance, which right now with interest rates, I mean, Lord knows where that's going.
I love this question because I do have more of the finance background, and I love getting, creative with people's finances and building financials and all that type of stuff. And I remember...
Jack of all trades.
I remember going back to the days of, when rates were very low, we'd still see a lot of all cash deals. Mm-hmm. However, I was seeing loan docs on these people's assets at 1.25%. So the uber wealthy all, when you're talking certain price ranges, they all have the money to buy cash usually, or 80-90% of them at least do. However, most of them are able to get very creative with a lot of other assets and aspects of their portfolio, whether they're working with you, the agent, on that or not. So it's not really financing the collateral of the apartment here, but it's more so how can you get creative? Because if you can let your money and investment work at 20% plus with some unique investment they have somewhere, and you can pull or loan against that, even at 7%, well, you're still making 13%, even if you're taking a loan and buying the asset here. So as an agent, if you can have, you don't need to, again, know everything, but know some of the people who know these things and how to do some of these really creative products against these, because they're looking at taxes. It goes to Leonard's point with, how are you looking at everything on paper? You can save people. I've saved people millions of dollars just being really smart and creative with some of these aspects with how they actually purchase the property. And then all of a sudden, some of these other burdens that, the operating costs to just live here, maybe seem a little bit lighter if they're able to get creative with some of that. So a lot of them have the cash. And a lot of the smart ones will get creative with it.
I think also a good percentage of people who buy apartments all cash finance then within 30 days of closing so they can get the full deduction on the interest.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but the point is there are still a lot
Lots
of people
of cash
who have a lot of cash and are willing to spend it and are willing to do what they need to do. And I mean in all price points. Your thoughts on where we are right now in the current market? I mean, luxury, not luxury, state of the market right now.
It's a tale of different worlds. You have certain products in multiple worlds. You have certain products in niche, either buildings or locations that are performing really well, and you could have a bidding war in the first weekend out. That's absolutely the exception rather than the rule right now. And then at the other extreme, you have sellers where some brokers joke they forget they have the listing. You could go weeks without a showing in this market, which is actually true. Part of that as agents is guiding our clients. Is that really bad or not? I'm a numbers guy as well, Ben. I'm a former lawyer. Yeah. And we love looking at the open house numbers to understand, well, where are we tracking within the marketplace? And also setting the client's expectations. My favorite question to ask in a pitch is, how many people do you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, think are coming each weekend per open house per property? And I love this. Recently, someone said this is a Manhattan property. Said, I don't know, like 20? And I said,
there's the answer.
You guys are laughing.
What decade are we talking about, okay? What decade
Correct. And I said, do I have...
2013?
I said, can I have a 1-year agreement on this property? Because, we're seeing, unfortunately, the new world we're in, and it's not all bad news, it's about one person per weekend per open house per property. So if we're seeing, that means you're seeing anywhere from 0 to 2 or 3 people every few weeks. And that's not bad in this market, because guess what? The buyers in this market, in my opinion, are still much more serious than they used to be. Pre-COVID, we'd say like 30 days, 30 showings. That was like normal. Can you imagine having 30 showings in one?
Well, I would say that, I think the important point around that is that the world has changed a lot in that
they're not all going to open houses. I agree with that too.
The first showing used to be the open house. Today, the first showing is online.
Correct.
When they come, that's the second showing.
Absolutely. But if they come to open house, right?
But the open house is a huge inconvenience. Going to an open house on a Sunday is an inconvenience. You're usually given 1 to 2 hours. It's an inconvenience. People would much rather be in their country house or the beach house and doing a whole host of other things, maybe with kids or whatever. Looking at something digitally now that you have extraordinary quality in your imagery, which 5 years ago did not exist. 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago, COVID was the acceleration of people's ability to view things digitally that now they do.
Would you call that a trend that used to be and a trend that is not today? Because I've been doing this job for many years, and I, always said, and I loved when I had 20 people at an open house or 10 or 15 or whatever. I mean, and that was kind of the norm, right? And if I had 2 listings in one building, I had 40 people, all right? But it didn't always yield into a deal or a sale or whatever, but it was just a lot of traffic. Today I think the buyer is a little more discriminating, okay? And for a whole host of reasons, post-COVID, you learned how to be more digital, you learned how to be more selective in what
swipe left, swipe right.
Well, there you go. There's a dating app again. But it's very true. It's very true. And I always say, I personally, when I was buying apartments before I was a real estate agent, I wanted that personal look and see and feel with an agent, with whatever, versus being there with 50 people running around open house, not having to have any conversation with the listing agent. My opinion, trend or not, that's changed.
I don't care who you are, what the trends have been with any of that type of stuff. I say this all the time, and I think it's so true. People buy with emotion and justify with logic.
Oh my God!
Right? As soon as they walk through the door, within a nanosecond, they know if they're buying it. Everything else after that is all just the justifications, that they need, within that. So if you are an agent and you're not getting ready for that first moment and entry through the door because you think an online video or this, that, or the other thing is going to sell it, you are totally mixing the mark.
Ben, please elaborate on that, because I couldn't agree with you more. 1,000%. I have said that. I teach that all the time. It's always that emotional walk in the door. I want it.
But I think
Period.
the photo, I think your imagery has to achieve that first.
No, right.
Before that. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
When they walk in, they'll know it. But I think that image is the bait that gets them to make a date.
And if you're a good enough, sensible agent, you can
the
feel
bait for the date.
The bait for the date, and then you got to. Are the photos what you showed online, or were they from you 20 years ago?
Real estate agents invented that.
There's a lot of that too.
People see my image online and they see me and when in real life and they're like, "Oh, it's you." And these days it's not Photoshop, it's filter.
Right.
It's filter, but it's true though. You know, you walk in first from the listing if you see it, if it's proper, and then you say, I mean, I did it multiple times when I was buying and selling apartments before I was a real estate agent.
You know what? A great magician always leaves someone wanting more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we saw this trend where, you know, during COVID, it's like, well, let's do everything. Matterport tours and every inch of the apartment.
Those are the drunk tours.
Yeah, going around. And sometimes less is more, and leaving a little bit for the mind to wander. So you have to make it look really good and leave enough where, again, always leave them wanting more. And then when they get there, it's even over delivery of that.
What do we say about marketing? We're not salespeople, right? We're marketing people. If you market properly, that starts with the listing and the photographs and the video if necessary and the content that you're writing. That's what gets people to say, hey, I think I'm going to take some time, whether it's an open house or a private showing, to go and see that. And then the rest, follows. But if your marketing is not good, it's not going to happen. In your opinion, Rory, so does this also map to what the luxury buyer is looking for? Do they not go to open house? I mean, I don't remember selling anything over $4 or $5 million to anybody at an open house.
Yeah.
I think they're private viewings, private showings. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think
most part.
price points can have a bit of a varying strategy. We're frankly not doing a lot of pure open houses for anything because to both of your points, all your points, I don't want someone coming to an open house from 1 to 2 o'clock. They spend 20 minutes, they love it, but there's no one else there. That's not a good look for our seller, and our seller's hiring us.
That's another thing
to strategize about this, right? How are we going to present the property? So I do think consumer trends are changing. People are willing to bop out during lunch or 3 o'clock on a Tuesday because they're in between meetings on Zoom to go see a property, and the presentation's important. If you can schedule back-to-back appointments, make sure the apartment really is showing as well as it can. A huge pet peeve of mine is if you're not getting there on time or early and you're turning the lights on as they're waiting at the door, and it's a huge clumsy feeling, and it's not going to be a warm... Yeah, that buyer's not going to have a warm feeling when the door opens and it's completely dark. Well, let me go get the shades, And look, we've all been there because things happen in life. But really, our clients are paying us to have a really good consumer experience. And so when you ask about the luxury buyer, they're expecting that, whereas maybe you feel like, a $300,000 studio buyer doesn't want that. I think everyone should get that experience. And I think the luxury buyer certainly expects that experience. And yeah, I do think they want to have a private feeling, a private experience. And that's why I think the open house by appointment, in most cases, not everything is the same, but serves a lot of those goals where you can go back to back and still make that luxury buyer feel like there's 3 other buyers waiting before and after.
If you're an agent, you better do it early in your career with those types of things. Like, don't play down to your level if you want to eventually be doing these types of showings and things like that, because they're like, I'll do it once I get a bigger property. Like, you got to be good at doing all those little things even at the early price points.
Yeah. Well, Brian Harris Stevens and Bess Friedman says this, and I think it's, we're not a luxury price point brand, but we're a luxury brand as far as luxury service, right? So Leonard said at the beginning of this, everyone wants to feel special and feel like they're getting a great experience, and that could be $300,000 or $30 million.
Yeah, but I think also you all said it. The COVID pandemic kind of squashed the need for open house. Look, I still have sellers tell me today that I really, do you really have to do an open house? I really don't want people running through my apartment. I mean, it was always a thing anyway, but sometimes, and it has nothing to do with COVID. It's just like, I got so used to people not running through my apartment, I don't really want that anymore. I get it.
But from a marketer's perspective, advertising an open house where no one shows up is actually valuable, because it gives you that one opportunity to message something that isn't, this is for sale. You're actually marketing an event where people may not want to come or even plan to come, but they're reminded one more time about something that they may not have another opportunity to be reminded of. So in that lies some marketing value too.
There's also a lot of algorithms that pick those things up and then move your property to the higher end. So the open house by appointment, to Rory's point, is a big thing because then you get sort of the algorithm boosts and all that.
We feel very strongly about that. If you see a listing that has no open houses for a week or two, I mean, as a good broker, you assume they probably have some activity. Of course, you're going to call and figure that out, but it's a marketing tool for sure.
I totally agree. Well, anyway, the brain power at this table today, I'd like to go on for another hour, and certainly they will be all back, but we have to take a break, and we're coming back with my final thoughts right after this.
Hi, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you know the right partner makes all the difference. At Roadway, we deliver an experience your clients will love. For specialized services and white glove care, choose Roadway. Want to learn more? Email me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
All right, everybody, we're back with my final thoughts. As the luxury real estate landscape continues to evolve, New York City remains a vital hub in the global network of elite living. The new generation of luxury buyers is redefining what it means to own property, prioritizing purpose over prestige and lifestyle over location alone. Developers, brokers, designers who understand this shift are delivering homes that align with a more mobile, values-driven way of life, and it will be best positioned to succeed. In a city that's always been a symbol of ambition and reinvention, New York City luxury real estate is now less about exclusivity and more about intentionally offering a home base for those who live without borders but demand the very best, wherever they are. Looking ahead, the most successful players in this space will be those who can bridge the local and the global, offering not just real estate, but a seamless, elevated living experience. From concierge services and flexible ownership structures to wellness integration and smart design, the future of luxury in New York will be shaped by those who understand that true luxury is not just about where you live or how you live. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Substack, if that's not alone, or TikTok, at Vince Rocco. And Einstein once said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it, and he who doesn't, pays it. And a programming note, the show will be on hiatus for the next 2 weeks. We're coming back in August on the 26th with all new shows as we prep for season 12. Oh my God, season 12, right around the corner starting in September. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. Keep thinking the good thoughts, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.